Every morning at exactly 7:10 a.m., the bell above the diner door rang once, sharp, metallic, familiar. And every morning, Clara noticed it before she noticed anything else. Before the hiss of the coffee machine. Before the clatter of plates. Before the smell of bacon drifting from the kitchen. The bell rang, and the old man entered. He moved slowly, as if time itself pressed heavier on his shoulders than on everyone else's. His coat was always the same, dark brown, threadbare at the cuffs, buttons mismatched. The kind of coat that had lived more winters than it should have. His shoes were clean but tired, soles thin, footsteps quiet. He carried no phone, no newspaper, no bag. Only himself. He walked straight to the window table, the one that caught the first slice of morning light, and sat down with a ritual-like precision. Coat folded carefully on the chair beside him. Hands resting flat on the table. Eyes briefly closed, as if gathering strength just to sit. Clara had been a waitress for 4 years. She had seen all kinds of customers, impatient ones, rude ones, lonely ones pretending not to be. But this man was different. He didn't pretend. He didn't look around, didn't check the time, didn't sigh dramatically. He simply sat there, waiting, as if waiting was something he had practiced his whole life. The first day Clara served him, she barely noticed him. "Tea," he said softly. Just one word. No lemon, no sugar. She brought it, placed it down, smiled out of habit. He nodded once. That was it. But the second day, she noticed something strange. He ordered toast. Plain toast. Dry. And when she brought it, he didn't eat right away. He stared at it. Not with excitement. Not with hunger. With something else. Something closer to memory. As if the toast reminded him of another time, another place, another person. Then, slowly, he broke off a piece and chewed carefully, like someone trying to make a small thing last. Clara turned away, uneasy. By the third day, she realized something that made her chest tighten. He was ordering less. Tea one day, half toast the next, then just water. And yet, he stayed just as long, sitting at the table until the diner filled with voices and laughter that never reached him. One morning, as Clara passed by with a tray of pancakes for a family in the next booth, she caught him doing something that stopped her in her tracks. He was watching another table eat. Not rudely, not obviously, just, quietly. A young couple laughed as syrup dripped onto their plates. A child waved a fork in the air, demanding more juice. Plates came full. Plates left empty. The old man's eyes followed every movement. Then he looked down at his own table. Empty. Something cracked inside Clara. She didn't know his story. She didn't know his name. But she knew that look. She had seen it once in the mirror during her first year in the city, when rent was late and pride was expensive. She stood at the counter longer than necessary, gripping a stack of menus. Rules echoed in her head. No free food. Inventory matters. You could lose your job. But another voice, quieter, heavier, spoke louder. What if that was your grandfather? What if that was your future? She walked into the kitchen, heart racing. "Mike," she said to the cook, forcing a casual tone, "did we mess up an order for table 7? Mike frowned. "Don't think so." Clara grabbed a plate anyway. Eggs. Toast. Warm. Simple. She carried it back, pulse hammering in her ears, and placed it gently in front of the old man. "Kitchen mistake," she said quickly, barely meeting his eyes. "Happens all the time." He looked down at the plate. Then up at her. For a moment, Clara thought he might refuse. That he'd say something polite and proud. Something that would make her feel foolish. Instead, his lips trembled. "Thank you," he said. 2 words. But they landed like a weight. He didn't rush. He didn't devour the food. He ate slowly, carefully, as if respecting every bite. When he finished, he folded his napkin with deliberate care and placed it neatly beside the plate. The plate came back empty. The next morning, he came again. 7:10 a.m. Bell. Window table. This time, Clara didn't wait for an excuse. She brought him tea, and a small plate of oatmeal. He looked at it, then at her. She smiled. "On the house. Slow morning." He nodded, understanding without pushing. Days turned into weeks. Sometimes Clara paid for the food with her tips, slipping a few dollars into the register when no one watched. Sometimes she convinced Mike to, accidentally, cook extra. Sometimes she simply trusted that kindness, somehow, balanced its own books. They didn't talk much, but little details emerged. He always thanked her by name once he learned it. He never wasted food. He never complained, not even when the eggs were cold. One morning, she asked gently, "Do you come here every day?" He smiled faintly. It gives the day a shape. She didn't fully understand, but she felt the truth in it. Another time, she asked his name. "Howard," he said. "Mr. Howard, if you like." She shook her head. "Just Howard." Something in his eyes softened. Winter came. Snow piled against the windows. The diner grew warmer, louder, more crowded. Howard's coat grew thinner by comparison, but he never mentioned the cold. Clara noticed his hands shook more some mornings. She noticed he stayed a little longer. She noticed that sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, he smiled, not at the food, but at her. Not in a strange way. In a grateful way, as if she had given him more than breakfast. One evening, Clara counted her tips and realized she was short for rent. Panic crept in. She thought of skipping the next morning. Thought of stopping the plates. Thought of rules and consequences. But at 7:10 a.m., the bell rang. Howard sat by the window, waiting. She brought the plate. He ate. The plate came back empty. And in that moment, Clara understood something she would carry for the rest of her life. Some kindnesses cost money, others cost courage, and some cost nothing at all, except the decision to see someone. Weeks later, on a quiet rainy morning, Clara tied her apron and looked toward the door. 7:10 came. 7:15 passed. The bell did not ring. The window table remained empty. For the first time in months, the plate never left the kitchen. And Clara felt, without knowing why, that the story was far from over. Chapter 2. The diner had never felt so loud. The coffee machine hissed like it always did. Plates clattered. A radio murmured the morning news in the background. Yet to Clara, everything sounded distant, muffled, as if she were underwater. The window table was empty. She stood behind the counter, pretending to wipe a clean surface, her eyes drifting back again and again to the chair where Howard should have been sitting. His coat wasn't draped over the back. His cup wasn't warming his hands. The sunlight fell across bare wood, unclaimed. Maybe he's late, she told herself. Old men are allowed to be late. But Howard was never late. 7:10 had been sacred to him. It was the one appointment he never missed, the one promise he seemed to keep to himself. By 8 o'clock, the breakfast rush arrived. Customers filled booths, laughter bounced off the walls, orders piled up. Clara moved on autopilot, smiling, nodding, refilling cups. Yet every time she passed the window, her chest tightened. She poured coffee into an empty mug by habit, his mug, and froze. The cup remained untouched. 3 days passed. On the second day, Clara asked Mike if he had seen Howard come in later. Mike shook his head. Haven't seen him all week. On the third day, Clara felt the fear she had been avoiding settle in her bones. People don't just disappear, she thought. Unless no one is looking for them. That morning, rain streaked down the windows in thin, relentless lines. The diner smelled like wet coats and burnt toast. Clara tied her apron tighter than usual, as if that might keep something from slipping away. At 9:12 a.m., the bell rang. 2 men stepped inside. They didn't look like regular customers. Their coats were too clean. Their posture too precise. One was younger, sharp-eyed. The other had silver at his temples and a calm, practiced expression. They scanned the diner, and stopped at Clara. The older man approached the counter. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you Clara?" Her heart stuttered. "Yes. We're looking for someone who used to sit by the window. An elderly gentleman, Howard." The name landed like a quiet thunderclap. "Yes," she whispered. "Is he okay?" The younger man glanced away. The older one inhaled slowly. "He passed away peacefully 3 nights ago." The world tilted. Clara gripped the counter to steady herself. The words passed away echoed in her head, hollow and unreal. I'm sorry, the man continued. He spoke of you often. That surprised her. He did. The man nodded, very fondly. They walked toward the window table. The rain outside blurred the street into gray shapes. The older man placed a single envelope on the table. Cream-colored, heavy, sealed. This is for you, he said. He asked that it be given to you personally. Clara sat down, hands trembling. For a moment, she just stared at the envelope. It felt wrong to open it, like touching something sacred. Finally, she broke the seal. Inside was a letter, written in steady, careful handwriting. Dear Clara, if you are reading this, it means I did not make it back to the diner. Please forgive me for leaving without saying goodbye. I never was very good at endings. You may think you were simply doing your job. You were not. You were doing something far rarer. Clara's vision blurred. She wiped her eyes and kept reading. I once lived a very different life. One filled with meetings, contracts, dinners where food was plentiful but sincerity was not. I was surrounded by people, yet profoundly alone. When everything I built disappeared, I discovered something worse than poverty, invisibility. Her hands shook harder now. You saw me, not as a burden, not as a problem, not as an old man taking up space. You saw me as human. Memories flooded her mind, his careful bites, his folded napkin, his quiet, thank you. That plate of food was never just food. It was dignity. Tears dropped onto the paper, smearing the ink slightly. The older man spoke softly behind her. Mr. Howard had no immediate family. He arranged everything in advance. Clara looked up, confused. Arranged, what? He left instructions regarding his estate. Her stomach tightened. He left the diner a generous endowment, the man continued, to ensure it remains open and debt-free. Mike gasped from behind the counter. And, the man said, turning back to Clara, he left something else. The younger man opened a folder. A trust fund, in your name. Clara's breath caught. That's not possible. I didn't do anything. The older man smiled kindly. You did exactly what mattered. Clara shook her head, overwhelmed. Why me? The man gestured to the letter. Finish reading. She looked back down. I could have left my money to institutions. To buildings with plaques and polished floors. But those places never fed me when I was hungry. You did. This is not a reward. It is a continuation. Use it to live freely. Use it to help others. Or don't use it at all. What matters is that you never doubt the value of a small act of humanity. Because sometimes, Clara, the smallest kindness outlives us all. With gratitude, Howard. The diner was silent. Even the rain seemed to soften. Clara folded the letter slowly and placed it back in the envelope. Her heart felt heavy, but warm, like something broken had been carefully mended. She looked at the window. For the first time, the table did not feel empty. She stood, walked behind the counter, and took a small chalkboard sign that had once advertised pie of the day. She erased it and wrote carefully. If you're hungry, you're welcome here. She hung it where everyone could see. That morning, a young woman hesitated at the door, clutching an empty purse. Clara smiled and pointed to the sign. A man ordered coffee for a stranger without being asked. Mike cooked an extra plate, just in case. And at 7:10 the next morning, the bell rang again. Not for Howard, but for someone else who needed to be seen. The plate went out, and it came back empty.